Managing a small team or business comes with a unique set of challenges. With limited resources and manpower, it's easy for things to feel chaotic and out of your control. How can you, as a leader, accomplish your goals while keeping your team engaged, effective, and accountable? This podcast will give you practical strategies you can implement now to lead your team or business to reach its fullest potential. Welcome to the Organizing Chaos podcast with your host, Danny Coleman.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Organizing Chaos, where we talk about small, practical strategies for small teams and small businesses. And today I have Mr. Dan Schwartz, who is a guy I've been following for a long time, probably before he knew I was following him. Honestly, this guy is just he's a really smart dude, and it's crazy how we end up connecting. We'll maybe talk about that a little bit during the show. But he is the founder and CEO of InvestorFuse, which is a CRM type software for real estate investors. And Dan, I'll let you take it away and talk a little bit about how you started doing this. How did you become a software CEO?
I appreciate that you said CRM type software, because we're trying to not be a CRM. Differentiation is one of the lessons we can talk about.
Important.
So yeah, I have an interesting story. My background is as a musician, and I was determined to be the real estate rock star that had a side income stream flipping houses, while also simultaneously touring and not being a broke musician, just to kind of prove to musicians that it's possible.
Yeah.
And I did. I was able to flip pretty consistently, like 3 to 5 houses per month in Baltimore, from 2010 through 2014-ish was my most active flipping years.
Okay.
And that was sort of my come up into the entrepreneurial world. And I learned, I got the MBA, the self-run MBA, just trying to do everything myself, and realize that, man, you can't scale by yourself. You need a team, and you need to have systems in place. Despite my inherent resistance to structure and system, I'm more of just like kind of a go with the flow type of guy.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest pain points for me was like, man, how do I actually set up systems so I don't have to do all this stuff all the time? I can just focus on music and stuff I want to do and hanging out with people that I love. And that was the big challenge that once I started talking about, I realized everybody else had the same challenges. You and I talk about this all the time. Like systems and processes are the crux of any successful business. And if you don't figure that out early on, then you're going to learn one way or another.
Yeah.
And this kind of meta that I started InvestorFuse, because InvestorFuse in itself is a system and process for real estate investors. So I was scratching my own itch. I understood the value of having a database to follow up with all of your incoming opportunities. As a business owner, you need some way you need a sales pipeline to close deals and to transact money. And that was like the biggest hurdle for most real estate investors. A lot of the technology was a little outdated and didn't really work well for the particular workflow of a real estate investor. So I used my experience and connections in that world to really put something together using existing software. So it was kind of quick to launch, this tool called Podio, which anyone can use and customize and tweak and automate. And, fast forward to today, and that's become a SaaS product, a monthly recurring subscription business model. And we just launched our own from the ground up software. And, we've worked with over 600 companies, all helping them sort of get out of their own way and structure their business around their ideal lifestyle, and to make sure that they're only focusing on what matters and letting automation and team do the rest. So that's kind of what I focus on now. And that's what I preach all the time. We're big believers in that, like team plus automation equals time freedom. And we just happen to make software that helps with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's crazy. So when you and I connected, we apparently became friends on Facebook at some point. I don't really know how it happened. I mean, I knew who you were because I was following a lot of the advice you were giving real estate investors about how to use Podio. And so I really nerded out on that for a while for the last place where I was an employee at, real estate development company. And so I followed what you did. I don't know, at some point we became friends, excuse me. And then it was just this year where I had a birthday, and then we have the same name too. I don't know if your full name is Daniel or not, but mine is.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyways, yeah. And then you commented, and I was just like, oh, no way. Like Dan Schwartz was like, I didn't even realize we were friends, I guess, you know? And I've been watching what you were doing with Investor Fuse though, because I had an interest back when I was figuring out how to use Podio and automate it and whatnot. I was like, man, it'd be really cool if we could figure out how to sell this, package it up and sell it. It's like my first idea that I had with my current business partner, Brian. We talked about doing that, but we were too focused on other stuff. And then when you launched that, I was just like, okay, there's no way we can compete with that. So, but yeah, no, it was interesting just how we kind of coalesced like the things that we talk about again, because I'm really big on obviously the same thing, systems and processes and team. And I focus a lot on team because I realize that there's so much that you can hash into with automation and processes and systems. But I find the human component the really interesting one. And I feel like a lot of small businesses struggle figuring out how to do that because ultimately it's human relationships, you know? And so here we are now talking about, you know, this stuff that's really common denominator, even if we're both in real estate, the stuff that we're talking about is really common denominator with any team. Like anybody, everyone needs to focus on how to leverage technology. Everyone needs to focus on processes, systems, having things documented, and everyone needs to focus on the people. How do you get the people component to work right? So as you've kind of grown your business, and how many employees do you have now or contractors?
We have 6 full-time US based and 10 or more overseas that are helping with support and development. And then we have 2 separate development teams. So all in all, it's probably over 20 people working right now.
So then as you went from being, you know, I know that it was just you for like in the early days. And I remember, I think you and Paul did a lot of work together too.
Yeah.
How was it like to kind of go from guy on your own, maybe you had a VA or something, I don't know, to having a team this size?
Yeah, it's a good question because I remember when I was just starting out as an entrepreneur, listening to a podcast like this, and it just seems very abstract and wishy-washy and not practical for my current situation back then, which was I just need to make money.
Yeah.
And I wish that people drilled it a little deeper into my brain back then, because the sooner you actually implement this mindset and understand the value of, you know, working on your business as if it was an engine that you were building separately, instead of being inside the engine, you're like an outsider cranking the gears and setting everything up and lubricating the engine so that the gears run smoothly. I wish I understood that way earlier on. So if you're listening to this and you're just brand new, try to imagine starting your business with this kind of mindset in play, and like from day one, documenting a system that someone else can run. Yeah. So I think it started for me very gradually, basically wanting to remove myself from the stuff that I just hated doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the very first thing was I had to go in and manually install people's Globy flows. So for those who don't know what I'm talking about, Podio has a separate tool that lets you create workflows. If you click on this button inside of Podio, then it sends an email, or then it creates a PDF contract with these fields in it. And that's how I created my version 1 of this product, is I just made a bunch of these workflows and put up some videos, and essentially people just, at one point they were just PayPaling me money and saying, can you just set this up for me?
Yeah.
That's how you know when you have a good business idea, by the way, is when people just start sending you money because you've tapped into something that no one else wants to figure out.
It's true.
And I remember I would do it myself a couple times, and then I realized there's no way I can scale this, or would I want to scale it? I would rather focus on just selling it instead of actually implementing it. So what I did is I recorded a video of myself doing it, and then I hired a VA, a virtual assistant, to create a step-by-step process of said video in a document form. And then I hired a more tech-savvy kind of someone that was familiar with Podio virtual assistant on Upwork.com. And I handed over that documentation to him. And I said, okay, every time a new customer comes in, This is what you're going to do. And then I remember the first time he fulfilled it and there was no problems at all because he followed the exact steps. That was like a light bulb moment for me. I was just like, oh my goodness, this can apply to everything. This can apply to my marketing, the sales, accounting, bookkeeping, the Facebook posts that you write, every single thing you can just shoot a video about and make a task list for and send it out to someone.
Yeah.
So that was the big part. It's just like, okay, you don't need to be inside of the engine. You should be focusing on building the engine and optimizing all these little moving pieces. And then all of a sudden the challenge becomes, oh, now you're a manager. Now you actually have to manage all these people and the process that they're running. And it's never the employee's fault. It's always going to be your fault as the owner of this company structure. And you're responsible for fixing the process. If the teammate is failing, it's your fault. It's the process's fault. You have to go back in and sort of perform surgery on your engine and make sure that they have everything they need to be successful. Or maybe you just hired the wrong person, which is a whole nother separate conversation.
Right.
So it's sort of piece by piece, I learned it. And as you do that, it becomes a forcing function to become a better leader. And how do you lead a group of people, and how do you make sure that the whole structure is moving in the right direction? Mm-hmm. How do you make sure everybody feels that they're actually contributing daily towards that direction? How do you maintain happiness on your team? These are all sort of, you learn this as you go. Don't think that you need to become like a leader on day one.
Yeah.
I think the best way to do it is to find an opportunity and just start to create these simple little structures that other people can do, and just focus on the customer, Yeah. And that's how I learned.
That's huge. I mean, so I think that, and I hope everyone listening, your analogies are really on point, by the way. And I also, I like to use, I say a car, like, your business is a vehicle supposed to take you somewhere. Mm-hmm. A lot of people start the vehicle, and they forget where it's supposed to take them. And when they're in it, it takes them wherever it wants to take them, Mm-hmm. So if you're not on the outside of this vehicle, understanding, or you're not in the driver's seat, rather, at least, where it's supposed to go, then it will take you, it will dominate your life. It will take over your, how your time gets spent. Mm-hmm. And then as you start to scale, you kind of hit on this a little bit too, but a lot of times people forget that their job is to help develop the employees in a way that they start figuring out the problems, So you don't always say the person who's doing, surgery on the engine or whatever, but that eventually you get to the point where you are empowering other people to find these problems, provide the feedback on the process, find the problems with the process and fix them yourself, rather than, always coming to me for problems. And that's just what happens. So many small businesses, it's just like everything gets bottlenecked at the owner because they've not empowered other people to solve the problems. I think at the beginning, you do have to definitely start in that mode where you are the problem solver. You can outsource. It's the first step, is start outsourcing, start delegating to other people.
Yeah.
Second step is start figuring out how to get those people to solve the problems that they're encountering without mm-hmm. you needing to necessarily be, the person saying yes or no or whatever.
Yeah. So this is a big challenge that I'm currently working on, is getting out of the way and letting your team come up with the solutions themselves. So I think as entrepreneurs, we tend to want to come up with solutions all day long and then just push that to your team. Like suggesting solutions, solving problems is kind of what's in our DNA. Yeah. But you really need to step away and, be quiet on those meetings and let your team come up with the solutions themselves. Otherwise they'll feel like they're not contributing as much. And there's a great book called Multipliers that I have read that kind of exposed me to a lot of my weaknesses as a leader. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, you may be well-intentioned in wanting to provide ideas all the time, but there's actually a negative side effect to that, which is if you become the idea guy, people they get inundated with ideas that they start executing because you're so good at selling them. But then the next day there's another, idea of the day, idea du jour, that distracts them from the day before. Yeah. And then this compounds that basically creates like paralysis across your whole team. So by being the idea guy and setting the intention for you to encourage other people to come up with ideas too, you're actually doing the opposite. So there's these things that you kind of learn that are kind of the opposite of what you expect to happen. And
Yeah.
it's good to develop an awareness of that early on too, and really just posing challenges to your team instead of posing solutions.
That's good. That's a perfect way to put it. And I just got off a call with another client, and we were talking about, he was trying to figure out, kind of what to do with a certain employee, whether to put them in, he wanted to put them in one role or the other role. Wasn't really sure which role to put them in. And I was like, let them decide, because whatever they decide, they're going to have more buy-in on that than if you were to have just decided for them.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to remember, oh yeah, I told so-and-so that this is what I wanted to do. So I better figure out how to do it. And you're going to find that most of the time, the people are going to not only meet your expectations, but they're going to end up exceeding them. Right. But that's the difficult part. And that's what I want to ask you about a little bit is, how do you deal with that? If you're going through it right now, I think probably every small business owner is going through it in some degree at almost every point until you're, outside of the structure completely. But, how do you deal with the fact, like, you think you have the solutions, or you at least feel like you're supposed to have them? How do you start trusting other people to make decisions like that otherwise you feel you should be making?
Well, it starts with hiring right. You need to hire people that you wouldn't mind working for in another life. I think a quote that I heard on like a Tim Ferriss podcast, and it's totally true. You got to be hiring people that you wouldn't mind working for in another life. They sort of have that get it done vibe about them that you trust that they're just going to make it happen. And most people, if we posted in one of the real estate groups right now, who here has A players on their team? Everybody would be like, I have an amazing team. Like, I have the best. No, I have the best team. No, I have A players. Nobody has A players. I believe that only 1% of businesses truly have A players in their team, and that all of us need to kind of raise the level of expectations on how great an employee can actually be, and don't accept mediocrity. I think it's one of those things that, like, you can only know if you have someone that can operate at that level once you start working with them for a little bit. And it's like, damn, they just did that. Like, I would have never thought of that.
Yeah.
And those are the types of people you have to look for. And you have to, in order to attract them into your business, you need to kind of be an attractive business. So, like for Investor Fuse, for instance, we have a careers page that kind of talks more about our mission than it does the product. You need to attract people that are bought into the why behind your business more than the what.
Yeah.
I think that is the essence of attracting great talent. People are more interested in working for Investor Fuse because they know that we're not like greedy and real estate investor types, but we care about our customers, and we want truly to create freedom in people's lives. Like, that's what our underlying why is. And that attracts a certain type of person, and they see all our content, and they see the videos, and they see the pictures of us hanging out as a team. And I think eventually you want to share the inner workings of your business and how you do things, because that's what attracts people to your way of doing things. It's kind of a long-winded explanation, but I feel like culture is a big part of it, hiring right, and then really establishing the habit of creating systems around everything that they do. And everybody on your team should own their role. And a part of that ownership is creating documentation around what they're doing. So you don't need to make all of the screen captures or lists for everything you're doing.
Yeah.
You hire someone, you give them a basic starting point, and then they can create the processes themselves. And they're the ones that are accountable to keep improving on that, because eventually they'll get promoted and someone else can replace them. They can train them because they already have all the documentation in place. So it's in their best interest to document stuff so that they can get a promotion faster.
That's a great way. That's key right there. I got to remember that one. That one's good.
Yes.
Because it does get difficult to get people to keep processes updated. And what I try to do is make sure that either if I'm consulting for someone or for our own team, like we revisit them no less than once a quarter. And so that way there's always at least this one point where it gets caught, where it's like, okay, how out of date is this process? All right, let's go ahead and update it. And, and then you can move on. Cause when you're a small business, stuff changes on the fly so much.
Yeah.
There was one guy I'm trying to get as a client. And he just felt like some of the stuff that I was sharing was just, it would slow them down too much, or it would keep them from being able to be as flexible as I need to be. And my argument was that, really, A players, like you were talking about, they crave structure. They crave knowing what's expected of them. They crave to know, what it is you want from them. And often when you don't have, a position clearly outlined or a process clearly articulated, you create uncertainty and anxiety amongst your teammates and your team members. So I think to kind of drive this all home, like, what do you feel is like the most practical, like, first step that someone can take if they feel like they're drowning in their business right now? If they feel like it's chaos, or they feel like things are just kind of messy. Like, what's the first thing you would tell them to do?
Write a list. So if you YouTube the Freedom Focuser list, Dan Schwartz, we'll put this in the show notes. I created a video that shows you how to essentially create a catch-all list for everything that you're doing right now.
Oh yeah, I've seen this.
Separate it out into departments, and then bold the stuff that you actually enjoy doing, and then put everything else on a separate document. And when you do that, and you actually take the time to like think about every minute detail that you do in a day, from every possible action, from communicating with people on Facebook Messenger to checking your Slack messages to logging into the back end of your WordPress website and updating this blog post, like everything, action step, put it on a piece of paper. Because if you don't do that, it's just going to be inside of your head and no one else is going to help you with it.
Yeah.
And when you do that, the process of doing that actually helps you see the matrix a little bit of how other people can fit into these departments. And then what you're left with is a list of basically a job description for who you need to hire first on one side. And then you have your ideal job description for yourself. Because it's important to remember, as an entrepreneur, you have the right to create your ideal job. And the job is not even like a good word for it. You have the right to create your ideal lifestyle.
Yep.
Because you're in complete control, and you're responsible for everything. And part of that means you have the flexibility to bring on people to do everything that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And I think there's a limiting belief that most people have that, oh, no one would want to do this admin stuff, or I can't afford this person yet. So those are some of the more common objections I hear. One, you can't afford not to do this. If you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you're not going to do it alone. And you need to understand that right now. If you're not a social person, if you're an introvert, I'm sorry, you're just going to have to suck it up. You're going to have a team. That's how you're going to scale and escape from what you're currently stuck in. And then, just make a little bit of money and then hire someone, or get creative and say, give them equity, or make sure that they have a commission so that they get paid when you get paid. There's so many ways to bring someone on if they believe in you.
Yeah.
And what value are you bringing? Well, you have the system. You understand the business model that's generating profit. You have the strategy that's going to create revenue, and you have the systems in play. Like, that's what people are looking for, like, that aren't an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I think you need to understand that that's your value as an entrepreneur, is you have the system. And people are attracted to people that have systems, and that there are people out in the world that truly enjoy admin work. They truly enjoy being virtual assistants and executive assistants, and they truly enjoy helping support other people's causes. And you need to understand that it's hard to put yourself in someone's shoes that is like that. But trust me, that is what the world is. That's what the world is made of. And entrepreneurs have a very limiting belief that, like, no one would want to do that. And you need to get over that belief right now and understand that if you provide the system, you will find people that can do the stuff that you don't want to do. And as soon as you start doing that, like, jump in. It's going to be a learning curve for you, but it's a forcing function to grow as an entrepreneur and as a person. And I highly recommend that you create that list and you immediately hire someone right now to take on at least one department, even if it's just general admin stuff. That's typically the first person you're going to hire.
That's awesome. You've completely nailed it. I feel like I could vibe on this stuff with you for forever.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about, just before we wrap it up, just like, do you have any books like must read? Like if you have one book, I know there's probably lots, but if there's one book you tell somebody that they really need to read, what would you suggest?
Man,
If they're in this situation we've been kind of talking about.
I mean, the E-Myth is the go-to.
Yes.
So I'm sure that's been talked about on this podcast before.
Yeah, that's part of the Bible for me is the E-Myth and rocket fuel. That's the core fundamentals.
Yeah. Definitely rocket fuel. Definitely rocket fuel. I think having a business partner is crucial, especially one that complements you.
Yeah.
The Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak dynamic is undeniable.
Yep.
I have that with my business partner, John, and it is the secret to growing an amazing company. That's like the strongest possible foundation to a business. Google has it, Facebook has it, Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg. Like, you need to have this dynamic, and you need to understand which one you are. If you're the visionary or the integrator. So that's from Rocket Fuel.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. E-Myth is good for if you're new to this whole concept of, hiring a team and creating systems and stuff. That's a good one because it creates a really good analogy with the whole bakery shop.
Yeah.
And then let's see, I'll give you a good one. Principles by Ray Dalio.
Tell me a little bit about that. I've not heard of it.
Principles by Ray Dalio is a very logical approach to setting up goals for your life, as well as a super, super in-depth management course. And he structures it in just like kind of bullet point style.
Yeah.
He talks about how there's two different U's. There's U1 versus U2, which is, so U1 is the person that's like in it, like in your business and like doing everything and like dealing with life. And then there's U2, which is like your higher self that's looking down on U1 and who are you serving and having an awareness of this. And he kind of talks about that logically.
Interesting.
It's an amazing book, Principles by Ray Dalio. I would definitely recommend that.
Cool. I'll check it out.
Yes.
Well, dude, thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it. I think we'll definitely have you on again. I feel like there's more stuff that we can hash out. I really would like to talk about like people specific, like hiring and stuff. I think that's so critical. And I definitely think that you and I vibe similarly on that stuff. So
totally.
Where can people find out more about you, get in touch with you if they want to, buy your product if they want to?
Yeah. If you just search Dan Schwartz on Facebook, that's a good way to connect. I'm kind of outnumbered on my friend requests, but if you follow me, you'll see all my stuff. I also have Instagram that I'm kind of starting now.
What's your handle?
It's my handle is Das Beats, which is my musical project.
Oh, okay. Cool.
DASBEATZ. You can follow me there. I kind of post my travel pictures, and I'm going to be posting some of my my music on there too, which is it's like my side passion.
Cool.
And investorfuse.com is my company, and we're always posting cool stuff on there. Oh, also, if you want to join, I have a kind of a private group of friends, basically called the Freedom Shapers. Basically, we talk about how to set up your ideal life, and it's basically all my most badass friends that kind of share the tips and tricks of how they were able to create an amazing life. So if you go to freedomshapers.com, it'll redirect you to that. Just request to join. Let me know what freedom means to you, and then I'll add you to that group.
Very cool. Awesome. I didn't know about that one. So thank you again for being on the show. Everyone who's listening, thank you so much for checking us out. If you have any kind of questions that you would like to hear hashed out on the podcast, shoot me an email, danny@dannycoleman.me. If you have something that you would like to share with a small business audience, something of value that you think would help other entrepreneurs and their teams, please shoot me an email as well. Again, danny@dannycoleman.me. I'd love to hear from you. Follow me on Instagram @IamDannyColeman, and we will see you later. Thanks.
Want more? Go to dannycoleman.me to download Danny's free small business hiring guide, which includes tips, templates, and tools, plus a step-by-step process you can use to find and keep high-quality employees for your small team or business.